Hi everybody, my name is Paveshya, and in this lecture we'll see that how we can convert the characteristic nature of Ethernet, which is broadcast, we can change it to point by overriding it. So first we'll see how it behaves naturally, and after that we will override it to point to point. So by virtue of this topology we'll understand that. So in this topology here, as you can see, router 1 is having IP address 12.0.0.1, and the router ID that we have given manually is 1.1.1.1. That will, you'll see that it will get reflected in OSPF. After that, we have R2 whose IP address is 12.0.0.2, whose router ID is 2.2.2. Right. So we have already configured, it's like I've already configured the essential configurations. So now we'll go and give the network command to our R1. So as you can see, this is the router ID, right? So we'll go config terminal. After that, we'll see a router OSPF 10, let's suppose, process ID. After that, we'll give the network for R1 is 12.0.0.2, and then inverse mask. What is the inverse mask? 0.0.0.255, right? After that, we'll give the area 0, right? Yes. Now, when we'll go and see show IP OSPF interface, not the command show IP interface brief, but by virtue of this, we'll see the full thing. Here, as you can see, it is telling me that okay, fast Ethernet 0/0. This right, this is the IP address, and this is the area in which it's operating, and this is the router ID of R1, right? Great. But the important thing here to note is when we check the network type, it says broadcast, right? As we have discussed that fast Ethernet's charac default characteristic is to broadcast, which leads to the selection of, or election of DR and PDR, right? So here you can see it reflects here. It says no designated router in this network. So it takes a bit time to get reflected. So let me use it twice. Here as you can see, now it says designated router, and this is the ID, and this is also the interface address, right? This is the designated router. Now if I go and say show IP OSPF interface brief, so here you can see the state is designated router, which we have already saw in the full description, but this is a brief one, right? So these were the default characteristics where fast Ethernet in OSPF is interpreted as broadcast, which leads to our selection of designated router and backup designated router. Now we'll change the characteristic manually, right? Or in other words, we will override the information. So in order to override, what we'll do is config terminal. After that, we'll say interface fast Ethernet 0/0, and we will say IP OSPF network point to point. After this command, we'll say end So by virtue of this command, we are changing the network type. Initially, what it was originally, it was broadcast. Now we converted it to point to point. So let me give you a proof. For that, I'll use the command show IP OS show IP OSPF interface, not brief. So here, as you can see, it says network type point to point, right? Yes. And if you observe here, after transmit delay, in the default one, in the broadcast one, we can see a designated router being elected. But here, as we have overridden to become point to point, there is no entry of designated router here, right? So if I use this interface brief now, the state will be point to point, right? So this is how we override fast Ethernet to behave point to point, where no designated router or backup designated router gets elected. So this was it for this lecture. I hope you enjoyed. See you in the next one.